our service, just a quick little word of inspiration about Pesach, and perhaps if you're going off to a Seder, this is something you can consider. So many times when we ask people, well, what's Passover about? They say it's about telling the story of our ancestors that we read about from Exodus through to Deuteronomy, and we, of course, do that. Haggadah means the telling, and we literally tell that story. And if you ask people, so, well, what are you supposed to do or not do on Pesach, on Passover? They'll say, well, you're not supposed to eat bread, and you are supposed to eat matzah, something like that, right? Like early paleo or, I don't know, some form like that. And that's sort of true. The key is you're commanded to eat matzah, and you're commanded not to eat chametz, okay? So the thing is, so what's chametz? Everyone thinks chametz is bread. It's not. Chametz means not matzah, literally. They are the opposites of each other. And the ingredients that qualify for chametz are the exact same ingredients that qualify for matzah. So for something to be matzah or something to be chametz, it needs to be made of one of 5 grains. Okay, I always get 4 and then forget the one. Wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye. I got all 5. That's a miracle, okay? Those are the 5. So like quinoa, bulgur wheat, whatever, they don't count. They are not in the category of the grains, all right? But matzah, for it to count, has to be made of those 5. Chametz, for it to be chametz, has to be made of those 5. And they need to be mixed with water. So the question is, okay, so then if they're the exact same ingredients, then what's the difference between chametz and matzah? And the difference is time. So anything that is made of those 5 grains mixed with water for 18 minutes or more is chametz. Anything made of those 5 ingredients and water for 17 minutes and 59 seconds or less is matzah, right? Exactly, is matzah. So what is the difference between chametz and matzah? 1 second. That is the difference, right? And so what's the message behind this? Like, why the matzah? Because we hear about the matzah, they didn't have time for the bread to rise, that's what they did, so they had the matzah. But that doesn't have anything to do with chametz. The key is matzah and chametz are metaphors. They are metaphors for all sorts of things, and the lens I'd invite you into tonight is the interpersonal one and the deeply personal one, which is matzah and chametz are metaphors for us. They are metaphors for people. And ultimately, the idea of leavening, which is what happens when one of those grains and water stick together for a longer period of time, they start to expand, they puff. So can you imagine what part of the human puffs, besides like bloating or things like that on Passover, right? Like what part of our spirit puffs? Our ego, right? So Passover offers to us a spiritual practice of getting our egos in check. We are supposed to be in the purest form we can of ourselves without ever kind of allowing ourselves to puff in an overextended way, right? And that's why we avoid chametz, because it is the metaphor for when we get bigger than we ought to be. The ego has a place, and it's important in life, but the Passover story, if you think about it, the ultimate example of an ego out of check was Pharaoh. And the ultimate example of a person very, very humble was Moses, right? They are the opposites of each other, and that's why one is the hero and one is the villain. But for us, this can be an opportunity to navigate through life, whether you eat chametz or don't for the next 7 to 8 days, to really invite a practice of ego checking and to see what it would be like to try to be humble, or more humble than you normally are as you walk through the world for the next week. Because when you come out of it, you might find that you stand in a different place, in different shoes, and likely you will stand more confidently. So hopefully that is an insight that if you're bored in your Seder, you can at least think a little bit about, or invite other people into as you go. So